I don't think anyone can spend too much time on trying to get to know themselves better, trying to help them understand that what they're so certain of, they shouldn't be so certain of. The only true wisdom is to know you know nothing. He taught me a lot about boundaries. He taught me a lot about standing up for myself. A real big rule that I help other people with is like you get what you tolerate in this world. I think what I experienced when I was younger was a lack of consciousness. So my gift to the world is, I said, well, I think if we increase consciousness to a sufficient level, the world gets a lot more pleasant.
All right, welcome to yet another edition of the Journey to Freedom podcast, and I am Dr. B. I'm your host, and just always excited to be able to talk to new people and find out what it is that they're doing in their lives that are making the world a better place. And I got to talk a little bit to Dominic, before the show, and realize he's one of those folks. He's one of those, I always talk about living boldly with purpose, or living with purpose, Dominic. And one of the things that, and maybe you can answer this as maybe you're telling the story a little bit after, is I don't think you can live in purpose and not serve others. And so I don't know if it's possible, if there's a way to do it, but I've been so fortunate on my show. I believe I had one guest that desired not to serve anybody ever and wanted everybody to serve him. His name was the Kingmaker. And it's one of my shows that I did put it up there, but with the disclaimer that says, I don't know where this thought process came from. I don't know how he does it. And I don't know how he's successful. But, if you want to, subscribe to his ideology, then knock yourself out. But for me,
I'll have to look at that one, see how it's done,
Yeah. Well, I mean, even with his wife, he's like, she gets to be my wife, and I tell her what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and she does, because she knows she's going to be she's going to have a better life because I'm here. And like, okay, that's how it works. Then I missed that train a whole lot.
Yeah,
for the rest of us, and I've done just about 400 podcasts now, and for all of it, most people want to do something for impact. A lot of people want to do something to serve others. And so, I love the fact that we get to do that. We get to come together. You were talking about becoming, the person. One of the things that I'm actually starting this next, and for those of you who are watching or listening, and at this time, probably by the time you watch this, we'll have already launched, but I'm starting a community called Becoming the Person Universe. And it's going to be all about folks that are wanting to become that person that I believe God put us on this earth to do. And so whether we have speakers, we have events, we have, community that we're doing, we have helping you take action, all that kind of stuff that, and all my podcast folks are grandfathered in, to being part of this. So that'll make you get to be part of the community, and grandfathered in as far as what do we do to help? What do we do to make sure that there's folks out there who want to achieve, that want to win, that want to move forward, and we get to help them be able to do that. So, just so cool that you're here today and you get to talk about some of these things. I can't wait to hear your story, like all of our guests. I've asked Dominic to tell a story. I tell all our guests too, you can start wherever in your life that you want to, because people love to hear so much about who we are before they get to hear what we do. And then they kind of get to know, like, and trust us so that we can open that door to be able to either influence, share influence, or just, make a difference in their life. So thank you for being on today. Thank you for taking your time. Dominic happens to be in Germany right now. And so it is late. It's not, early, in the day where he's, it's kind of towards the end of the night. And so to take your time to say, hey, I want to be part of this. I'm in awe, and I just love the fact that you're willing to do that. So the floor is yours. Let's hear your story. Can't wait to hear it. And then we'll just chop it up after that.
All right, beautiful. Thank you. I'm not sure how long this will take, but bear with me, everyone. So I'll start with where I was born. I was born in Chicago. I've got two older brothers, and let's see, south side of the city. And I guess I'll put maybe two placeholders. Well, a few. So like mom, amazing, incredible. Couldn't have been better. Dad, similar, but like good things. People need things to work with within life. And being the youngest, I guess there's a certain perspective I may have on life, or other people may have perspectives on the youngest. So I think a lot of things I would say were normal in the sense that went to school, grade school, high school, went to college at Stanford University out in California, worked at Motorola for a few years, and then went back and got my MBA, went to Wharton in Pennsylvania, and did consulting for a bit, did a little bit of tech, after that. And the last position I had before I became a coach and just worked for myself was a director at the Leadership and Development Institute for Homeland Security. So this was a place largely that did exactly that, leadership development for the senior management, senior executives for Homeland Security. And I learned a lot in that position. First time in that position, had an amazing team. The information being taught there was incredible. And I always felt like we could go a little bit deeper. And so by deeper, I mean, so we may work on things like, time management, productivity. So there's also communication, crucial conversations, many things like that. But, I was always curious why people had certain ways of acting or ways of being. Some people were just angrier types, or some people had a lot of insecurity, or some people had a lot of anxiety or fear. And so they could actually be, say, like top performers. And at the same time, they could still have these ways of being that I thought, I guess a couple of things. One, it did affect their performance in many ways. And the other thing is, I think it prevented them from being a person that they would enjoy more. And also others would enjoy interacting with them more. So as my mind will do, I said, well, let me see what I can do to go deeper. So I was blessed enough to be able to get a coaching certification while I was in the same position. And and shortly thereafter, I started coaching. And so at first, I just had clients on the side. Did that for many years. And then I learned about entrepreneurship. Then I learned about charging clients. Then I learned about marketing and sales and other stuff. But eventually, I went off and did this on my own. So largely, this is what my primary focus is. I work one-on-one with people. A lot of people are very similar to the background I had. So these people would be people who've done really well at kind of hitting a target. And so they got the education they wanted, income, career, maybe relationship. And perhaps they reached a place where they're is this all there is? or it was what else is there to life? Or they've got these things, but somehow it's shaking apart. They can't get to that next rung in terms of their career. They stalled in some ways, and their relationship, their primary one is not one that they're passionate about or they're super interested in. So I mainly help people turn dials. A lot of times, very subtle things that create dramatic change in their lives. And I'd say that the key to that is a tremendous increase I help them with in self-awareness. There's that saying, know thyself. And so I don't think anyone can spend too much time on trying to get to know themselves better. So that's one of the big things. And the other thing is trying to help them understand that what they're so certain of, they shouldn't be so certain of. So I think another one of these phrases of ancient wisdom is, the only true wisdom is to know you know nothing.
You don't know.
Yeah. So I share that gift with everyone, because I had the huge realization at some point. I said, wow, for a guy who's had like a really good education and thinks he knows a lot, the real truth, now that I think about it, is I don't know. Most things I don't know. And so I said, well, let me approach it another way. Let me just be present to whatever's happening, and then use the information in front of me, say, to make decisions or to interact with people. So that's me in a nutshell. I think something might be helpful, or maybe something to dig into. Like, people might say, well, why coaching? Why are you driven to do this type thing? As near as I can tell it, I'm still trying to know myself. So as near as I can tell, I think there are two primary things. So when I was growing up, going back to my father, wonderful man, but very strict. He had a very black and white view of the world in terms like, you do this, you don't do that. So a lot of what I grew up with, it was very much thinking like, the things are right or wrong, or this is good or bad. And I definitely found out that lacked nuance for what I needed in the world to, have good relationships, to, get along with people, in friendship as well as like personal relationships. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is, one of my brothers, the middle brothers, I'll just say it was a difficult relationship. I mean, not a bad guy, but during the time, the younger years, my only real recollection of him is being what people would call like a bully.
Hello, this is Dr. B, and I want to ask you one simple question. What if you died having never become you? Now, I don't mean the version of you that worked the job, raised the kids, or chased security. I mean the person God actually designed you to be, the real you. Because there's a version of your life that's already been written, and it's full of peace, it's full of boldness, it's full of purpose, and of course it's full of power. But most people, many people, they miss it. They live distracted, doubting, disconnected, and deep down they wonder, is this really all there is? But not you, and not today. That's why we created the Becoming the Person universe. It's a living, breathing community of people saying, I want to be who God called me to be. Not someday, but right now. So inside, we'll walk you through 3 levels of transformation. Level 1 is all about identity, where you finally see yourself clearly and know exactly who you are and who you need to become. Level 2 is about mastery, where we develop the disciplines to grow. And then finally, level 3 is legacy, where your life begins to matter beyond you. And hear me. I want you to hear me clear here. This is not a place to passively belong. This is a place to grow, lead, and thrive. We even have ways for you to share in the revenue as we grow, because we believe in building legacy together. And I want you to know the founders and I are praying for you. We have been praying for you. You have been on our hearts. Yes, you have been on our hearts. You're not watching this by accident. And I want to personally invite you to the next info meeting, where we will go over all this community has to offer. All you have to do is just click the link before, you know what to do. But now it's your turn. I want to ask you to ask yourself, what if this is the moment everything changes? What if this is the reason you've been searching? What if all God has been waiting for is for you to say yes? There's a seat for you here, whether you're rediscovering yourself or finally ready to leave a legacy and are ready to contribute. Either way, this is the Becoming the Person universe. And once you're in, your life will never be the same. So I can't wait to meet you. I can't wait to spend time with you. I can't wait to see you on the other side. So let's go live in that purpose, and let's do it together.
And I must say, he's been one of my best teachers in the world. He taught me a lot about boundaries. He taught me a lot about standing up for myself. He taught me like a real big rule that I help other people with is like, you get what you tolerate in this world. So a lot of things, I think that drive me today, I got from him. And I think one of the reasons I like coaching and getting into that, and I shared with you a little bit before, I feel I'm here to increase consciousness is because I think what I experienced when I was younger was a lack of consciousness. and so my gift to the world is, I said, well, I think if we increase consciousness to a sufficient level, the world gets a lot more pleasant. And I realized when I was younger, like I did do something I think was really good that a lot of people don't do. Like when there's adversity, let's say bullies, someone gets picked on. A lot of times people say, well, it must be because something I'm doing. And I never thought that for a second. I said, I don't know what's going on, but you have some stuff that like you haven't resolved. And, for some reason, like you want to like work that out by taking it out on me. And that doesn't work for me. And so I'm not old enough or strong enough yet to like unwind this, but I'm not going to compound it by assuming like there's something like wrong with me in this picture. And I don't know how I came to that conclusion at such a young age, but I can tell you it's definitely a very valuable conclusion. I do share that with people because a lot of times it's amazing. People who achieve a lot in life, a lot of what they're using very frequently is insecurity as fuel. And so they don't feel that they're good enough. And so that means they need more, sometimes of everything. They need more money. They need more status. They need a better position, better house, better partner, that type of thing. And so no matter what they have, they're trying to accrue things external to them to say, well, if I get this thing, then I'll be okay. Surely I'll be worthy at this point. And it's a game you can never win. So that's also one of the things I help people with a lot. I help them see the game or the games that they're playing and just let it go. And yes, increase self-awareness and try to pepper it in with increasing consciousness. So that's me in a nutshell.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. I want to jump back to South Chicago. You blew over that, like, because South Chicago is not, from my understanding, because, I've been to Chicago over time. I've never lived in Chicago. I even worked in Chicago, but I would fly in, stay at a hotel for a week, and then come back to Denver. But that was living. I was back in, it was North Chicago. But all the stories I hear is that is a portion of Chicago that maybe not be the easiest place to grow up with all the distractions and everything else that can happen. Did you find your childhood to be, just like what you would consider normal because that's what you knew compared to what you know now? Or was it, or was there some trying stuff that went on while you were growing up?
Yeah, it's what is that thing we call normal? It's kind of hard to define. And I would say whatever I grew up with, I thought definitely was normal. So I guess so. Along the way, I mean, I can say things like I did see a tremendous amount of I mean, I don't know how to say it. So it's just I would see, fisticuffs, violence, people going at it. And some of it was involved in, not too much. And I also realized it came in that people are raised very differently in different homes because I knew what was going on in my home, which was a lot of just, I'd say, really good behavior because my dad, and I would observe other kids and very belligerent, very reactive, knew all the language, used it, it was very unsettling to be around them. I'll definitely say that. I remember, one time I went to a park with my brothers. My mom dropped us off, and like 2 minutes later, I'm getting hit in the head by some big kid. and I'm not saying this is an everyday occurrence, but I still do remember it right now. It hasn't gone from my understanding. Some neighborhoods, I mean, Chicago, it's probably still the same way, but they were very particular about like ethnicity. I mean, they wanted to know like Black, Polish, Irish, Hispanic. I mean, it really mattered. So I remember while enjoying my bike rides, like, some neighborhoods I would get chased out of, or, I have like rocks thrown and stuff. So, and I want to stress, it wasn't like it was an everyday occurrence, but I will say I did gain a lot of like awareness to say how to navigate. Definitely like a big city, how to navigate like different people, whole thing of like, watch your back. Yeah. So that was there. Maybe in modern times, we might say I could have developed something that we call hypervigilance. But in sure, there was definitely like a good amount of gang activity, but what I really want to add to this is what was going on inside my house, completely different. Like my dad was a very much no nonsense person. Like you knew exactly where you stood with him. There was no ambiguity. Really big heart. And it was also very important to him that you acted like a certain like way. And so I think another way to say that, he set a certain standard. And so I preferred to meet my dad's standard than than not meet it and deal with those consequences. And the other thing is like both my parents were in the house. And so, and here's something I think that is probably my greatest asset in life. Like with both of my parents, the only thing I understood from them is that they were very happy to have their children. They were enthusiastic parents. Like they embraced the role. They loved spending time with each of us. They didn't play favorites at all. And my mom's like main interest for me was, she says, I just want you to be a good person. Yeah. So it's kind of, I mean, when you grow up with those things, I would go so far as to say it doesn't matter what's going on outside because you're kind of insulated from it. I was not going to be running the streets. I was not going to be part of a gang or anything like that because, dad wouldn't have stood for that. And because they were so present and like, and my mom had standards too, they would very quickly say, well, why would you be involved with this? Or it's like, you're not going to do this. And so there was always like a very strong guiding hand. So yeah, I mean, everything you heard about Chicago, yes, it was, it was still there. And I'm not sure if we're still there, but I think it reached recently, like murder capital of the world. I mean, it wasn't when I grew up. So, but I'm sure those beginnings were there along the way. Not my reality, even though it was the reality.
It's your community, but not your specific reality. I can remember in 1980, we have our family reunion. I don't know why we have a family reunion and we go to Chicago for our family reunion, but that's what we did. Maybe it was 1982, maybe it was right before, but it was in that 78 to 83 time. And I can remember like part of our family reunion was we were in Hyde Park, and then we literally went to Cabrini Green as part of like the tour of Chicago. Like that. Why are we here? Why
are we here?
Let's go in the Sears Tower. It's up, but why are we? Well, we just got, this is how folks, I'm like, I didn't get it. And, and the reason I ask those questions is because I think about identity, right? And I think about the identity that became who Dominic is today based on, and I think you alluded to it, like I had both parents in the home. I had both parents that were present. I had both parents who knew exactly what we were doing. That shaped your identity more than the community itself. And there's so many people who I guess, I don't know if you want to say succumb, but get so involved in their community because maybe their parents aren't. I bet you knew a whole lot of your, your friends and the people you went to school with that probably were, had single parents at home, that had parents that were out in the streets doing stuff, parents that were, not present, caring, not that they didn't care about their kids, but maybe didn't know how, maybe didn't know that there were other options that their kids could have. Like when I took Cabrini Green, I can't think of, why you're there going, people here are surviving. This isn't where, you're thriving because, your environment is every day. It's like, wow, what's going to happen today compared to you're in the same city, in the same vicinity, obviously not at the project housing, but, where where your dad's saying, okay, we're going to make the best out of whatever the situation is. And we're going to have a loving family. We're going to do whatever we need to do. And my kids are going to grow up and go to Stanford, get out, grow, and end up at, the university. And it sounds like education was super important to them as well. And so maybe talk about your identity a little bit and maybe some of those transitions in your identity throughout your career that helped you become the person who can now coach people about it.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that. I don't think I thought about those terms, particularly at a younger age. I think my identity, thinking back to just a younger age, I just wanted to be good.
Good person, not just good, right?
Yeah. And it wasn't like to be good enough or be worthy. It was more like I'll keep going back to my father was a strong influence. So I wanted my dad to think I was good because he took swift action. So there's also an assessment out there like Enneagram. So on that, there's 9 types on the Enneagram. I'm a 1, and so each of these kind of has a particular like guiding light. And so the type 1 is it's to be good. That's what we want. And so that be a good son, be a good student. And so I think that was pretty much like the youth. I just wanted to be good. So also I think if there were authority figures, I wanted them to like think I was good. And so I think also it gets in there. It's a bit of a facade. I mean, I'm a kid. I'm not going to be good all the time.
So you're attempting to be good. You're not. You're just not doing what everybody else is doing. You're actually you care, and there's probably guilt if you do something that you're probably not supposed to do.
Yeah. But there's also the seeds in there. We hear about people in their shadow. And so the shadow is basically, the aspects of ourselves that, we don't like, we don't want anyone to see. And so, of course, the thing I didn't want people to see was that I did have bad aspects or misbehavior or whatever. And so, that's also because there's 9 different types of the Enneagram. So everyone has their particular flavor and like the shadow side of it. And so, as an adult, what I ran into at something, I said, wait a second, like I'm trying to be so hard to be good for all these like different people that I'm being inauthentic. Or, there's actually things I want to try that they're not bad. They're just different than what I have been doing, or that maybe they're out of line of expectations of other people. And so, I could actually do some different things that from a different lens, they're not bad, but they're also not in line with like, what other people say would like care for me to do. And I have to learn to be like, okay with that. I get out in the workforce, I'm continuing the same thing, the same game. I want to be a good employee. And so, as a type 1, it's not necessarily a bad game to play in a very traditional life because, good student, good employee, there's payoffs to it. I'd say the downside of that along the way is it can be a life that is somewhat rigid or hemmed in, or, you're not trying different experiences. And then there's a big judgmental side to the type 1, if you don't work on it. I'd like to say I've worked on it, but since I'm making so many things wrong for myself, I can very easily make things wrong for other people. So I gained awareness on this, understand it. So like I'm not saying I don't judge anymore, But what I focus now more is just what I could just say discernment, trying to do things with wisdom and not really defining things by like right or wrong or good or bad. It's just different choices with different outcomes. So let's see, modern time. Here I am a coach. So I do have this identity as a coach. But I also have come to understand something else. No matter what I say I am, I know I'm not that. And so if someone says like, what do you do? I can say like, I'm a coach. But in the background, all I know is I think what I'm really am is a person who's just trying to understand things at deeper and deeper levels. And I'm at the point where I would say I know there's an objective reality, but I think my ability to perceive it or other people's ability to perceive that objective reality is very limited or non-existent. And so instead of trying to deal with what other people call like true or not true, like that's actually a game I don't play. All I know is when people tell me things, they're telling me things from their perspective and they believe it. And so I'm just focused on trying to understand their perspective. I'm not trying to say, well, you're right or you're wrong or what you said is true or false. I said, let me just understand it. And so that's more the identity I am in right now. I don't know what the title of that is, but
hey, it's Dr. B, and let me ask you something just here real quick. Are you tired of doing the same thing over and over and not getting the results you want? Are you serious about making some changes this year that will impact you in a huge way? Maybe you're putting out content right now and it's not turning into customers, or maybe you're uploading videos, but you're not sure why or how it's even going to help. I've seen a lot of people that are making a whole bunch of cold calls to the wrong people, and no one's answering. No one wants to talk to you. It might just be that you're just doing what you've been doing and crossing your fingers, hoping it finally works this year. But let me tell you what, that is not a strategy and it will continue not to work. That's why I created the Podcasting Challenge, and it's coming up fast. In just a few days, I'm going to walk you through the mindset, the tool set, and the skill set you need to create a powerful podcast. That's right, a podcast. You won't believe what a podcast can do. One that builds real value and creates new clients. And if you grab a VIP ticket, you'll get to join me for a daily Zoom Q&A sessions where I'll personally answer your questions and help you tailor everything to your goals. This is your moment. This is your year. Go to thepodcastingchallenge.com right now and save your seat. The link is in the show notes and the description. Thank you for watching these podcasts. Now let's get back to the conversation.
I would say if there's any identity I would give myself, it's that of truth seeker, meaning I'm just trying to understand things as they actually are, not the way I want them to be or I need them to be, and just understand them as they are, my circumstances as well as other people. And, that's the main thing I'm trying to help my clients with. And, they're very much in a reality of they want the world to be a certain way. And I just tell them it's not the way that they think it is. And so once they can see it with accuracy, we can make a lot of progress.
Well, and you think that, as folks are experiencing, we all look from our own vision and from our own perspective. And until we actually move and try to, I remember that, I think it was a movie called Viewpoint or something like that. It might have been filmed in Chicago with that forest. I can't even think of it right now. But anyways, they went around with the camera and showed everybody's viewpoint to where they're from. And I think it's until we are able to come outside of our own, because we have our own experiences, so we can't change that. But that doesn't mean we can't try to learn from others as to what might be their perspective and try to understand from them. And then, like you said, then you can find truth. But, I guess I get confused sometimes when people say, well, this is my truth. Well, I mean, that's your perspective, but truth is truth as far as I understand it, or I try to, think of it as there's things that are true, and gravity is true. It's gonna, try to throw something off a building, it's gonna fall, right? If you jump off and say, well, I shouldn't really fall because my truth says I'm gonna float. Well, it might be your truth that you're gonna float, but the truth is gravity's gonna drop you on the ground and you'll die.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, we want simple solutions. We want the world to be simple. And the thing, it isn't. Like, we want the black and white. And the thing is like, there's a lot of grays, or we can say there's millions of colors to use. And when people say, like, my truth, already I know, like, we have issues, because there's, as you said, you don't have a truth. You just have a perspective. And like all of us running around on the planet, we don't have truths either. We all just have perspectives. And so all we're doing is just sharing perspectives with each other. And so, I mean, I can agree there are facts. I mean, you mentioned gravity. I mean, maybe a certain thing happened on a certain date, sure. But I think, if anything, what the internet has shown us with so many people online and sharing viewpoints is that we don't agree on anything. Nothing. So rather than still trying to have that conversation where, like, I try to convince you I'm right, I would just say, let me hear what you have to say. It actually goes to, it's a bit of older management book now, but it's still valuable. Like, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Even Covey's, it's still.
Yeah, that one rule. It says, seek first to understand, then to be understood. And that's the thing. If we just do that, we're good.
Well, and I don't think you can seek to understand if all you're doing is the talking and you're doing the listening. I always hear that you got 2 ears and 1 mouth. You should use them in that way. And then so many of us don't really listen to what other perspectives are trying, or put ourselves in those places. Which brings me to, and as we're seeking this, and everybody, like you said, everybody, we don't agree on anything, but yet I believe we're called to be in a relationship, or we should be in relationship with folks. I mean, I can't imagine what life would be like if you're out in the middle of the woods by yourself for your whole life. In fact, people who do that come back because they need to be in relationship. So part of the human experience, I believe, is relationship. So how do we do that and do it well? And I can imagine part of your coaching is, okay, so there are relationships, and our status is inside of those relationships and how we manipulate our worlds through those. What is your thoughts on deep relationships, surface relationships, all relationships, and you do it in the next 3. No, however long it takes you to talk about this. Yeah.
Well, I only need 30 seconds. So.
Okay.
So I think a good starting point is, think of it as like skill building. So, everything we have in our life is typically, the result of some set of skills. If we can ride a bike, we learn to ride a bike. We spent time learning how to ride a bike. If we know how to swim, same thing. If we're being compensated for a job, particularly if we're highly compensated, then we have a tremendous skill stack. And so to have a good relationship, it's a skill stack. And so, one might say, well, what is that skill stack? And I would say, first of all, realize, like, no one's taught to have good relationships. So just assume you don't have it, or assume that you actually suck at relationships. Assume you're bad at it. Like, you wouldn't jump in the ocean without learning how to swim and say, like, I'm probably going to be great at it. You say, no, let me life preserver, work with someone. And so, like, if you assume you're bad at relationships, then I think you're in a much better place, because you can say, okay, well, how do I get competent? How do I get good? And so we mentioned it before, self-awareness. So the more you know yourself. And so why will that help? Because we all will have what we call triggers in relationship. So when we get triggered, our self-awareness understands why we would get triggered. So I mentioned my Enneagram, I'm type 1. So anything where someone reflects back to me, or they give me an impression that they don't think I'm good, I can have this trigger and get angry, and I can say, well, I feel threatened. Like, how dare you question my character? How dare you tell me, like, my work is not good enough, and though, the mistake would be for me to start attacking them, or saying, like, you're a difficult person, or like, I don't care to be around you, or like you have these type of issues, it was just be able to say, okay, well, I'm triggered, and this is for me to deal with, and this is part of my childhood stuff where, I'm trying to be good for like my father in school and whoever else, and I also get to let it go. So I think that's a very good thing in relationships. Is like, you're going to feel discomfort, and understand that discomfort you're feeling, like you're the source of it. It's not the other person. You're the one creating like the feelings inside of you. And so to the extent that they're uncomfortable, just understand that this friendship, this relationship, they're mirroring back to you. They're showing you in a way that you can use to be really helpful for yourself to figure out how to be less triggered. And so the more you know yourself, the more you know your triggers, the more you'll understand how to diffuse your triggers, which means inherently you're a much more pleasant person to be around. So in relationship, you don't want the other person or other people to carry the burden of your unresolved issues. So if you know, like, you're quick to anger, or you know that like you have a lot of anxiety, or you know that you're very judgmental, or some people, they say, I'm a lot to handle. Like, so if you know you're a lot to handle, work on yourself until you're a pleasure to handle. You're a pleasure to be with. And then that's when you're going to have really harmonious relationships.
I mean, there's so much to unpack in some of the things you just said that I kind of want to go deeper with. But first, for those of you who continue to hear Dominic talk about the Enneagram, which is the great personality test that I believe that you can go online and there's ways to take it. But he says he's a number one, which they call a reformer, or maybe even a perfectionist, somebody who wants everything. It says the core fear is being bad, wrong, or corrupt. The core desires to be good, ethical, and right, and then integrity and improvement are part of it. I happen to be a number two, which is what they call a helper or a giver. I'm a 2 of 7 almost equally. And my core fears being a want or involved, core desires to feel loved and needed, and motivated by helping others. The 3 is what they call an achiever or a performer. Their core fear is being worthless or failing, or feeling that worthless. And then the core desire is to feel valuable and successful. And the motivation is to achieve status and admiration. There's only 9, so I'll get through them really quick. The individual list is the romantic person. That's number 4. Their fear is being insignificant or having no identity, and their desires to find themselves and their great significance. Their motivation is expressing uniqueness and authenticity. Number 5 is what they call an investigator or an observer. The core fear is being overwhelmed or incapable. The desire is to be capable and competent, and the motivation is understanding self-sufficiency. Then they have what they call the loyalist, which is the guardian. Their core fear is being without support or guidance. Their desire is to feel secure or supported, and the motivation is safety, loyalty, and preparedness. 7 is the enthusiast. This is the other half of me. The fear would be being deprived or in pain. The desire is to be happy and satisfied, and motivation is enjoying life, avoiding pain, and seeking excitement. Then they have number 8, which is the challenger or protector. Their core fear is being controlled or weak. Core desire to be independent and strong, and the motivation is control, power, and protection to self and others. And then the last one is what they call a peacemaker or mediator, and their core fear is conflict and disconnection. Their desire is inner peace and harmony, and they avoid conflict almost at all costs. Keeping peace and merging with others is what they do. And so if that gives you a little bit of insight for those listening that haven't even heard of this thing, that is when he's talking about I'm a number 1. He is talking about his status in that personality test, and something a really good one to go after and do.
Thank you for the summary of that. I'm glad you put it out there. It's one of the top tools I use with people. And
Okay.
Yeah, and to add to your like, well, how do you have a good relationship? Well, self-awareness. Know your Enneagram type, and if you can, know your partner's Enneagram type, because then you can see, this is where our wounds start to battle each other. So we can just step out of the game we're playing and just say, hey, this is what's going on with me. I'm dealing with it. Let's just focus on what the issue is rather than beating each other up.
Well, and you think like for some of those personality types, the person needs to be right to feel whole, and I may not. So, okay, I don't need to be right now. I just let's get over this and get to the next thing. I'll let you be right, and we can move on with our relationship. Because it is so amazing how we have that conflict within some of these relationships. I do a podcast that we're bringing back, and we're having different hosts called Why Love Waits. And we think about, in the culture, at least the one I've been studying with it, which is Black men and women, that, the statistic is that 49% of Black women that are over the age of 40 have never been married. And you start thinking why that is. What are the relationship boundaries and barriers that are there? And of that 40, that 49% of the one over 40 that are married, 75% of them have at least one child. And so there's this belief that men or they're taught, or as we've been exploring it, that this relationship is not as important as the relationship you can have with your child, or the relationship that you won't have, and the better off you'll be if you're not in a relationship. But when we think of true joy, and we think of the happiness that we achieve, I think of you talking about your parents and how much they loved you as kids. I could imagine their relationship with each other was probably pretty harmonious or joyful as well, because it's really hard to give that to other human beings in the same household if you don't have it with each other.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, the way things go, it's like there's so many patterns in life, and I would say there's good patterns and there's bad patterns. The good patterns we kind of don't need to worry about because they're working for us. The bad patterns are rather patterns that give us results that we don't want, or ones we kind of want to unpack. And I would tell everyone, the younger you are, the closer you are to having many unresolved issues that you're unaware of. And so just by definition, a person in their 30s is going to have a bit more wisdom and have worked out things than, say, a teenager or a person in their 20s. Now, a way you can accelerate that is just as I said before, if you want to learn how to swim, you learn how to swim. If you want to learn how to ride a bike, you learn how to ride a bike. If you want to learn how to have harmonious relationships, you learn how to do that largely by increasing the self-awareness. But you also can do a broader look and saying, well, you know what? I hear there's something out there called therapy. What is that? Would I benefit from it? Or I hear there's something out there called coaching. Could I benefit from that? And what I love about coaching is you can see top performers have multiple coaches. They have a nutrition coach, they have a strength coach, they have a sleep coach, they have a flexibility coach. And the teams are playing on, they've hired coaches for them to work with them and stuff. So, it at least once in one person's life, at least once, it might behoove you, if you want just a quantum shift, is hire a coach. Or hire someone that just maybe has 10, 15, 20 years experience of helping people perform better. Because, the best thing I can offer people is a perspective they don't have. That's really it. Because people's problems come from a limited set of perspectives. They can't see another way of doing things, or they can't see their blind spots. And so if you work with someone who has done that for a huge amount of time, I mean, they're going to be able to see your blind spot, pretty much before you open your mouth. So yeah, I mean, I think this is like a big way for people to get ahead of it. And there's other things, I mean, for some reason, like yoga is really good at doing that. Some people get it with their church groups, religious affiliation. But in anything that gets you to look at perspectives outside of yourself is going to help you. I mean, you will be crippled by what you don't know. And so what you want to do is rapidly increase your knowledge of things that you're unaware of, just different ways of looking at things.
I'm so glad you went here, because in the last few podcasts that I've had, in the last few, whether it's coaches or I'm on a show, we've really been diving into the difference between therapy and coaching. And one of my guests asked me the question that he says, if you have a high-end coach that is helping you get to where you want to be, do you truly need a therapist? And I'm gonna let you answer, but one of the things that I'm really grappling with is there is a place for therapy, and that there's unresolved issues that need to be resolved. That needs to happen. But the roles of each are so much different. The role of therapist is to look at the past and bring you to maybe a baseline level. But the role of the coach is to look into the future and help you get to where you want to be, and almost collapse timeframes. When you think of, how much time does it take to get there? Can you get there without a coach? Possibly, maybe. But can you do it in the time? Like they'll say, are you a millionaire, right? And you say, well, my lifetime or in the last year or the last month, right? Because if I make $25,000 a year and I've worked for 40 years, I've made $1 million, but I probably don't feel too much like a millionaire when I've done it. But if I collapse that into, making $100,000 a month, now in 10 months, I'm $1 million. Now that's considered somebody who we would, as a society, say, that's a millionaire wealthy person. Well, the same thing goes on with our thought process and where we want to achieve and where our goals and where we want to go. And without a coach, I guess, or somebody to help you see those blind spots, because they're looking into the future and collapsing those time frames, whereas a therapist on the other side of it is really just resolving and getting you to a place where maybe a coach could jump in. I mean, what's your thought on those two things? Because you brought them both up. And so would love to kind of hear this. I can't wait to hear that.
I mean, I would say, treat yourself, use both.
Yeah, there you go. I love it.
Yeah. It's interesting on the therapy side. Like you said, there's a lot of the thinking is it's looking at the past. And I've looked into this, and, there's this debate, well, that, where does therapy end and coaching begin? And there's like a good amount of overlap. And I can definitely answer it from like what I've experienced, because I've worked with a number of people who have seen therapists, and more often than not, they'll tell me like a session with me has been like a session, not several, but a session has been more helpful than, say, years of being with the therapist. And I've heard that so many times. I've tried to like really figure it out, and I started asking questions. And I think what I was able to discern, and I'm not saying this would apply to all therapists, but what I was able to discern, I think in therapy, a lot of times, yes, it is looking at the past, and you will talk a lot. So as long as you want to talk about things, you'll be kind of rehashing these things. And so it seems what I was hearing from my clients that I asked, it's like there was a lot of talking, but not necessarily key steps on like what to do next. And the reason I'm a coach and the reason I love it is because it's all about resolution. In fact, it's for me, it fits with me. It's a very masculine energy type coaching, at least the way I'm doing it. It's very solution focused. And so, because at the end of the day, I know no matter where you are, what's going to get you out of it is action. You have to take action. And so I help my clients formulate, actions, a list of options. I give them like multiple different things they can do. And I say, but at the end of the day, you have to do this, or you have to do these things. And I think what I've been able to discern, and I'm willing to say, like, maybe I'm not right here, is I don't think that comes across as strongly in therapy. But here's the thing, like, there are many people that I know I couldn't connect with as a coach that I think do need therapy. So like, if someone comes to me and say, they're dealing with, sexual trauma, physical abuse, like drug addiction, and it's really interrupting their lives, like, meaning they're not able to hold down the job, or they're not able to like have friendships, like it's a life that's kind of like dysfunctional. I'm actually not able to work with those people because I don't really connect with those things. It really hasn't been my experience. So like I said, the people I'm working with, they're very good at hitting a target. And so there's something called like executive function. They're very good with the executive function. And so they may get into areas like burnout. They may have things like, depression or anxiety, but I'll tell you what, they'll be at the job every day. They'll hit every deadline. they'll hit all those performance goals. So those are the people that I'm working with. And so it's not to say that those people haven't had physical abuse or sexual trauma or stuff, but they've been able to at least put a life together where those things are more in the background than the foreground. So I would say, at least in the coaching I'm familiar with that I do, that's the bigger difference. And so I would say for people who, if you find that your life is just not working at a very fundamental level, like, just recurring health problems, everyone has ostracized you, that type of thing. I'm not saying there's something inherently wrong with you. I'm just saying, like, you have some core things that need to be resolved. And in those cases, I think therapy can be invaluable.
I agree. And I also think, I just finished a book called We Do Have, and it's all about becoming the person you need to be, and before you start to do what you have. And so we spend so much time trying to do stuff. And when I think of joy and happiness, that's what we're doing, is we're trying to have these incredible lives that bring us joy and happiness. One of the core things about being is learning, right? The more that we learn, if you learn something, you can't wait to share it with somebody else, but you can't wait to do a little bit more. That first time you learned how to ride that bike, or that first time you learned how to do that swimming and you could do it on your own, that's when we're most excited and we're joyous. And that's where I guess the joy of coaching comes in. Now, I've been coaching track now for 38 years and, at all levels. And, to have an athlete or somebody be able to achieve something they've never done before, and then seeing the elation and the joy that brings. And then, that moves into, learning. Now we talk about relationships where I got to share that with somebody. It's no fun to climb a mountain and get to the top and not have anybody to share it with. Like I still imagine people on nowadays on their cell phones going, I'm at the top, I did it. Instead of like waiting until they're taking pictures or selfies or whatever, so not for themselves, because they want to share that with others. And then the contribution side of having is, now we get excited when we get to give and we get to help somebody else or sponsor somebody else into something that brings them joy. And when I see those things, I don't see people walking out of therapy that excited that are, I've learned something. Now they come to grips with where they're at in life, and now they feel like I've been now released so that I can go do those things. And so I guess that's where I see this big, definitely necessary. And like you said, do both if you got the ability to do both. There's all the things, but then the things that really truly bring us joy, or something. I think we need that other perspective of somebody who can help us get there. And, and maybe the therapists do help you get there. I haven't been in any of any therapy sessions where I come out of there, or I'm happy, and I think it's been very helpful, but not to the point where I'm ready to go change the world. Where I definitely had coaches that I know I'm changing the world because he told me I'm changing the world, and and I can imagine the sessions that you do with folks that they would say that at the end because they believe now you've given them the tools that they need. And coaching isn't, the better coach you get to be, and this is for, Dominic knows this, and for those of you out there, if you're looking for a good coach and that coach talks all the time and never asks you questions, then you probably don't have a really good coach because they got to know where you're at all times. They have this line and go, okay, now we go forward. Because when I first started coaching, I would just tell them all the things to do, all the mechanics of everything. I didn't care where they're at. Like everybody's the same, right? Mm-hmm. Now most of my coaching, I don't talk at all. I ask you for that feel. What do you think we need to do next? Is that working for you? Whatever those questions are, where I'm getting that constant feedback. And then, like you said at the beginning, which I thought was really cool, I'm just turning little dials. Because most of the time you already know what to do. You just don't know how to do it, or you don't know the next, iteration of the steps to be able to do that. And let's find that together so you can repeat it instead of me telling you what to do all the time.
Yeah.
But that was just super interesting.
I'm amazingly quiet in a lot of my coaching sessions.
Yeah. If you're not, then you're not coaching. It's my time. When I'm going to yell at you, to get you to do something, the good days is way over to, that type of coaching. But, when I think of the best, like, let's say you're Michael Jordan's coach, you're Phil Jackson, and you're coaching Michael Jordan. What skill could you possibly skill that you already have and make it even greater? And I think that's the true sign of a coach.
Yeah.
Man, this has been, we're having this great conversation. I hope that we get to continue it. And what didn't we talk about in our time together that you wanted to make sure? I want you to tell everybody how to get a hold of you, how to utilize all that kind of stuff. But is there any other specific thing that you want to make sure we talked about today?
Whew. I guess there'd be so many things, but I would just have people I would say keep focusing on the possibilities available with yourself. Okay. And I think a lot of people get caught up with what they don't like about themselves. I'm not productive enough. I'm too lazy. Not pretty enough. I'm too fat. Blah, blah, blah. It goes on and on. And so, most people, they're hyper focused on what they don't appreciate about themselves. And I would just say, switch it. Become hyper focused on what you do appreciate about yourself. And if you don't have a list of those, then come up with things. And it can start small. It's like you got up in the morning, great. You ate a nutritious breakfast. Wonderful. You're a good friend to people. Those are good starts. But you can go much deeper. We all have certain strengths that we don't really see as strengths because we just do them effortlessly. And so we kind of assume everyone's able to do this, but if we really look at ourselves, we can see wow, I'm really good at this. And this is actually something that I can at least acknowledge and tell myself, give myself a pat on the back for it. And then, that can lead to other things. And so much of our experience of the world, in fact, our only experience of the world is just our perspective on how we see things. And the core perspective that we have of life is our own identity. So just how we see ourselves. And so I fully encourage people to learn about yourself really well, that self-awareness, focus on things that are your strengths, or focus on things that you just like to celebrate. And I would say, understand the power of story, or understand the power of myth. And so when you think of yourself, you're involved in a story. I mean, like what's heroic about what you're doing, or what could be heroic about what you're doing? How can you see yourself in a good light? And when I don't mean like, gaslight yourself, or like, give yourself credit where it isn't due, but most people are way overdue in terms of appreciating themselves. And, I tell you, there's something about self-acceptance, which is great. We should all have that. Most of us don't. But imagine just like radical enthusiasm for yourself. Or put simply, feel about yourself the way your dog feels about you.
Wow. Assuming your dog isn't trying to bite you all the
time. Right.
The loving dog, but yeah. Well, you haven't abused. Oh gosh. Wow. Well, thank you for taking the time today, Dominic. It's been enlightening. We're going to find a way to communicate some more. I got plans for you and I together, because it's just, there's so many really cool things that you were able to say. And so, if you've been watching this and you're feeling what I'm feeling, that, man, this has been some things. Go back and watch it. Go ahead and hit pause. Go back, take some notes, write some stuff down. At least go take the Enneagram test and find out exactly who you are.
At the very least, yes.
Yeah. So that you can be the best that you can be. There's other ones out there, like, I've taken the DISC one, I've taken the, Myers-Briggs. There's different personalities, but I think Enneagram is one of my favorites. We talk about extrovert, introvert, and Myers-Briggs all the time. But man, what a great time that you've had together. So thank you for being here. If this is your first episode, and you go ahead to subscribe and notification. Dominic, we'll be talking again. I assure you that. And so you're going to want to know when we do that. And as we get the community together and you're part of it, and maybe talking to some folks, I think it would be this is going to be fantastic. So I would just say this is the beginning. This isn't the end. This is, the start of what I would call something special. And then, like I said, I appreciate you being on the show today. One last thought to give out to everybody that can help them, and also give your website or whatever it is that if people need to get a hold of you, they can.
Yeah, pretty simple. You can reach me at an email. I know it might be a little bit old school, but Dominic, Dominic, at innerpeaceadvisor.com. And you can also find me on LinkedIn, Dominic Petty. And you can also find me on Instagram, which the handle, the username is innerpeaceadvisor.
Thank you. All right, folks, this has been another great episode. Don't forget, I believe your God's greatest gift. He loves you if you allow him to. It's time for you to become the person that he put you on this earth to be. And so what I would just say is, let's go, let's grow, let's become. And we look forward every single day. I want you to have a great day in every way. And then every single day, just do a little bit better for somebody else, and your life, you'll be amazed what your life can do. All right, so we'll see you on the next one. Have an amazing day.